My name is Commander Elias Thorne. I served 22 years in the United States Navy, mostly in special warfare development. I deal in tactics, in logistics, in things I can touch, measure, and destroy. Or at least I did. I am recording this because the man I was before November 14th, 2025, no longer exists. That man died on a cold steel table in a medical bay in the North Atlantic. What returned, what is sitting in this chair speaking to you now, is something else entirely. I have a burden that is burning a hole through my chest, and I have very little time to deliver it. You need to understand the context of my death to understand the validity of what I saw. We were running a deep submersion retrieval exercise about 200 miles off the coast. It was routine. Hazardous? Yes, but routine for us. The water temp was near freezing. I was in a lockout chamber, prepping for a dive, when a catastrophic failure occurred in the pressure equalization valve. I won't bore you with the engineering, but essentially, the pressure hit me like a freight train. It wasn't a slow fade. It was violent. It was instant. 1 second I was checking my oxygen mixture, and the next, there was a sound like the earth cracking open, and then darkness. They tell me later that my heart stopped for exactly 9 minutes. In the medical world, 9 minutes is an eternity. Brain damage usually sets in after 4. But I wasn't there to worry about brain damage. I wasn't even in the room. The first thing I remember isn't the light. Everyone talks about the light at the end of the tunnel, but that came later. The first thing was the silence. If you've ever been on a warship, you know it's never quiet. There's always the hum of the reactor, the vibration of the hull, the sound of boots on grating, the ocean itself. But this silence was absolute. It was heavy. It felt like I had been unplugged from the universe. I was standing, or floating I suppose, though it felt like standing, in the corner of the medical bay. I looked down. The scene was chaotic. I saw my own body. It looked small, frail, like a discarded wetsuit. My face was purple, eyes fixed on the ceiling. I saw Doc Martinez, a man I've known for 10 years, pounding on my chest. I could hear him screaming orders, but his voice sounded tinny, like it was coming through an old radio from a mile away. "Charge to 200, clear!" I watched my body jerk. I felt nothing for that body. That was the first shock. I loved my life. I loved my wife, Sarah. I loved my kids. But looking at that meat on the table, I felt absolutely no attachment. It was just a vehicle I had exited. It was broken, and I was free. Then, the ceiling of the medical bay dissolved. It didn't break. It just became mist. The gray steel, the fluorescent lights, the frantic movement of the corpsemen. It all faded into a gray fog. And then the fog began to spin. It turned into a vortex, a massive swirling hurricane of energy. I felt a pull, not like gravity, but a magnetic pull on the very center of who I was. I was being drawn upward. I moved fast. Faster than any jet I've ever seen. The earth fell away. I saw the ship, a tiny speck on the black ocean, then the curve of the horizon, then the darkness of space. But I didn't stop there. I punched through the fabric of the stars. The darkness turned into a tapestry of colors I can't name, colors that don't exist in our visual spectrum. I could hear a sound, a frequency. It was a low thrumming, like a choir of a billion voices, humming a single, perfect chord. Then I arrived. I wasn't in a garden. I wasn't at pearly gates. I was standing on what looked like a floor of polished glass, but it was alive. It looked like a sea of glass mingled with fire, just like it says in the book of Revelation, though I hadn't read a Bible in 30 years. Below my feet, I could see galaxies spinning. I was standing on the firmament of the universe. The air, if you can call it air, was thick with a substance that I can only describe as knowing. On Earth, we have to learn things. We read, we study, we experience. There, you just knew. I breathed in, and I knew the chemical composition of a star a billion light years away. I breathed out, and I understood the intricate biology of a leaf. But more than that, I felt a presence. It started as a warmth on my back. Then it grew. It became a heat, intense but not burning. It was the feeling of being watched by someone who knows every secret you have ever kept, every lie you have ever told, every tear you have ever cried, and loves you anyway. I turned around. He was walking toward me. He didn't look like the pictures in the stained glass. He wasn't a pale, fragile man. He was a warrior. That was my first thought. This is a commander. He was tall, broad-shouldered. He wore a robe that seemed to be woven out of the light itself. It didn't have seams or threads. It was just a living fabric of luminescence. But it was his face that broke me. His skin was like burnished bronze. His hair was white. Not like an old man's hair, but white, like a flame is white at its hottest point. And his eyes. I will never, for as long as I exist, be able to describe those eyes adequately. They were pools of fire, but inside the fire was an ocean of compassion. When he looked at me, I felt stripped naked. My rank, my medals, my toughness, my training, it all evaporated. I fell to my face. I didn't decide to do it. My knees simply gave out under the weight of his glory. It was terror and ecstasy colliding in a single moment. "Stand up, Elias," he said. His voice was the sound of the ocean. It was the sound of thunder. But it was also the voice of a father waking his son. It vibrated through my bones. I tried to stand, but I couldn't. I was trembling so hard I thought I would shatter. He reached down. His hand was solid, warm, and rough. I saw the scar on his wrist, a jagged mark of ancient violence. He pulled me up, and as soon as his skin touched mine, a jolt of electricity went through me. It wasn't pain. It was life. It was raw, unfiltered life rushing back into a spirit that had just left the land of the dying. I stood, and for the first time, I could look him in the face. "Lord," I whispered. It was the only word my mind could form. "You are not finished, Elias," Jesus said. He didn't smile, but his expression was soft. "You have run ahead of your time. The cord is not yet cut." "I don't want to go back," I said immediately. And I meant it. The thought of returning to that cold, heavy body, to the politics, the pain, the confusion of Earth, it was repulsive. "Please let me stay. I feel home." Jesus stepped closer. The light coming off him was so bright, it cast no shadows, only illumination. "Home is prepared for you, but the harvest is not yet in, and the winter is coming." He turned and gestured to the space beside us. The air shimmered and opened up like a massive screen. I was looking down at the earth again, but it looked different. I saw the globe spinning, but it was covered in a web of dark, viscous fog. It was suffocating the planet. But piercing through the fog were beams of light, prayers, I realized. "Look at the time," he said. I looked at the vision of Earth. Superimposed over the planet was a calendar. The pages were turning rapidly. October 2025. November 2025. December 2025. The pages stopped on December. "I am sending you back with a burden," Jesus said. His voice dropped an octave, becoming serious, urgent. "The world believes they have years. They believe they can continue in their slumber, playing with shadows while the sun sets. They are wrong." He pointed to the date. December 31st, 2025. "Watch," he commanded. I watched the vision of Earth on New Year's Eve. I saw the parties. I saw the fireworks in Sydney, in Tokyo, in London, In New York, I saw the ball drop in Times Square. I saw the champagne, the laughter, the drunkenness. The world was celebrating the arrival of 2026. They were chanting the countdown, 10, 9, 8. But as the clock struck midnight in the vision, something terrified me. The sound stopped. In the vision, the fireworks froze in the sky. The people cheering froze with their mouths open. The cars stopped on the highways. The waves stopped crashing on the shores. It was a global freeze, a suspension of physics. What is this? I asked, panic rising in my chest. This, Jesus said, is the great silence. It is the moment I have appointed to separate the wheat from the chaff. It is not the end of the world, Elias, but it is the end of the age of grace as you know it. On December 31st, as the year turns, I will stop the noise of humanity. He looked at me, and the fire in his eyes intensified. For 1 hour, deep silence will cover the earth. Every electronic device will fail. Every engine will cease. Every voice will be silenced. And in that silence, every human being on the face of the earth will hear my voice, not through their ears, but in their spirits. I stared at him, trembling. Everyone? Even the atheists? Even the warlords? Everyone, he confirmed. From the king to the beggar. In that hour of silence, I will show them the condition of their wolves. I will show them their sin, not to condemn them, but to offer them the final plank of the ark. It will be the last global invitation before the door is shut. The vision shifted. I saw the aftermath of that hour. I saw people falling to their knees in the middle of Times Square, weeping. I saw men in high-rise offices tearing their suits. I saw families huddled together in living rooms, stunned by the revelation of God's reality. But I also saw something else. I saw men hardening their hearts. I saw people shaking their fists at the sky once the silence lifted. I saw governments immediately spinning narratives, claiming it was a mass hallucination, a solar flare, a biological weapon. This is why you must go back, Jesus told me. The enemy knows this date. The principalities of darkness are preparing a deception to explain away the great silence. They will call it an alien contact, a neurological phenomenon, a hack of the human mind. They are already writing the scripts for the news anchors. He placed his hand on my shoulder again. The weight of it felt like a mountain. Tell them, Elias. Tell them that on the last night of this year, I will speak. Tell them to not be afraid of the silence, but to listen to it. Because after the silence, the separation begins. Separation? I asked. The gray zone is being removed, he said. Starting January 1st, there will be no middle ground. A man will either be hot with my fire or cold with the world's ice. The lukewarm will be spit out. Those who reject the voice they hear in the silence, their hearts will calcify. They will become unable to hear me again. December 31st is the line in the sand. I looked at the date again. It was so close. We are in November now. It's weeks away. Why? I asked, tears streaming down my face. Why are you doing this? Why such a drastic measure? Jesus looked at the earth with a look of such pain that it broke my heart. Because the time of the Gentiles is full, because the cup of iniquity is overflowing, because I love them too much to let them sleepwalk into hell. I am shaking the foundations to wake the sleepers. But Elias, you must warn them about the deception. What deception? The counterfeit, he said. Immediately following the silence, a figure will rise. He will claim to have caused the silence. He will claim it was an evolutionary leap for mankind, a moment of global consciousness sinking. He will offer peace, but he will bring a sword. If my people are not ready, if they do not know that the silence is my mercy, they will be tricked into thinking it is man's evolution. He gripped my shoulder tighter. You have died, Elias. You are dead to the world now. You go back only as a messenger. You have no career. You have no reputation. You have only this truth. Can you carry it? I looked at him. I looked at the scars. I looked at the love that was radiating off of him like heat from a furnace. How could I say no? How could I deny the request of the King of Kings? I will carry it, I whispered. Then look, he commanded. Look at what happens to those who listen. The vision changed again. I saw the people who accepted the silence, who repented during that hour. I saw a light enter them. It wasn't metaphorical. It was a visible, golden glow in their chests. And I saw them walking through the year 2026. The world around them was crumbling, economies failing, wars erupting, natural disasters spiking. But these people, the ones who heard the voice in the silence, they were walking in a bubble of protection. I saw a woman in a war-torn city praying over a loaf of bread, and the bread multiplied. I saw a man laying hands on a dying child in a hospital that had no power, and the child stood up, healthy. The supernatural is about to become the natural for my remnant, Jesus said. The era of the church simply surviving is over. The era of the church conquering through power is beginning, but it starts with the silence. It starts with the surrender on December 31st. Suddenly, a siren began to wail. It wasn't in heaven. It was a distant, annoying, rhythmic beeping. They are bringing you back, Jesus said. He stepped back, and the warmth began to fade, replaced by a cold wind. Wait! I reached out for him. I need to know more. How do I make them believe me? I'm just a soldier. Jesus looked at me one last time, and his figure began to blur as the vortex opened up behind me. They won't believe you because of your words, Elias. They will believe you because you will carry the scent of this place. And he paused, and a look of intense seriousness crossed his face. Tell them that death is not the end, but December 31st is the end of the beginning. Do not let them be found drunk on the wine of Babylon when the clock strikes 12. Tell them to be on their knees. Lord, I screamed as the suction of the vortex grabbed me. Go, he commanded, and do not be silent. The sensation of returning was 1,000 times worse than leaving. Leaving was like taking off a tight shoe. Returning was like trying to shove a size 10 foot into a size 6 boot. It was painful. It was claustrophobic. It was violent. I slammed back into my body with a gasp that sounded like a scream. I opened my eyes. The bright surgical lights blinded me. The noise was deafening. He's back! We've got a rhythm. Sinus rhythm. BP is rising. I felt the heavy, crushing weight of gravity. I felt the stinging burn in my chest where they had used the paddles. I felt the tube in my throat. I tried to thrash, to sit up, to tell them what I had seen, but I was paralyzed by the drugs and the trauma. Doc Martinez was leaning over me, his eyes wide behind his surgical mask. He looked terrified. Commander? Jim? Can you hear me? You were gone, man. You were flatlined for 9 minutes. I couldn't speak because of the intubation, but I grabbed his scrub top with a strength I shouldn't have had. I stared into his eyes, and I saw him recoil. Later, he told me that when I opened my eyes, they didn't look like my eyes. He said they looked ancient. He said for a second, he thought the room got brighter. They kept me in the ICU for 3 days. They ran every test known to naval medicine. Brain scans, heart echoes, blood work. They couldn't explain it. By all medical science, I should be a vegetable. My brain was without oxygen for too long, but my cognitive tests came back higher than my baseline. My body healed at a rate that spooked the nurses. The ribs they broke doing CPR knit together in 24 hours. I was discharged a week ago. I requested immediate leave. My commanding officer thought I was suffering from PTSD. He wanted to send me to a psych ward. I told him I just needed to go home to my family. But I didn't just go home. I went to my study. I locked the door. I pulled out a calendar. December 31st. I sat there for hours, just staring at the date. I could still feel the heat of Jesus' hand on my shoulder. I could still hear the silence of the universe waiting for his command. I am telling you this now because the timeline is short. We are in November. Most of you are planning your Christmas parties. You are worried about gifts, about travel, about bonuses. You are distracted. And that is exactly where the enemy wants you. Jesus told me that the silence is a mercy. But he also told me that what comes after the silence depends entirely on where your heart is when the clock strikes. I have more to tell you. There were things he showed me about the specific events of January, about the counterfeit leader who will rise, and about the safe zones, the places of refuge that God is preparing right now. But I need to catch my breath. My heart is racing, just reliving the encounter. Please, I beg you, do not treat this as just another internet story. I am a man who deals in facts. And the fact is, I died. I saw the king. And he gave me a date. December 31st. Prepare your hearts. The silence is coming. This is Commander Elias Thorne. If you are listening to this, you have already heard my account of what happened on the operating table on November 14th. You know about the silence that is coming on December 31st. You know that for 1 hour, God is going to stop the world to speak to every human soul. But that was only the beginning of the download I received. What I am about to tell you now is harder to speak about. It is the part that keeps me awake at night, staring at the ceiling, wondering if we are strong enough for what is coming. Jesus didn't just show me the silence. He showed me the noise that follows it. After the vision of the New Year's Eve freeze faded, the scene shifted violently. I was still standing on that sea of glass, but the atmosphere had changed. The warmth I felt from the Lord was still there, but his face had taken on a look of steely resolve, like a general surveying a battlefield before the first shot is fired. He waved his hand, and the year 2026 unrolled before me like a map. "The vacuum will be filled, Elias," he said. "The silence creates a hunger. When the world wakes up on January 1st, they will be terrified. They will be desperate for answers. They will realize that their science, their government, and their technology failed them for 60 minutes. And in that moment of vulnerability, the wolf will step forward." I watched as the timeline moved to January 3rd, 2026. I saw screens, billions of them. Televisions, phones, holographic displays in Times Square, tablets in rural villages. They were all broadcasting the same face. It wasn't a monster. It wasn't a politician screaming speeches. It was a man who looked perfect. He was young, perhaps in his late 30s, with a calm, reassuring demeanor. He didn't wear a suit. He wore simple, modern clothing. He sat in a chair that looked like it belonged in a high-tech startup. "Who is that?" I asked. "The Counterfeit," Jesus replied. "He is the voice of the new age. He will not claim to be God. He will claim to be the next step in human evolution. Listen to him." In the vision, I could hear the man speaking. His voice was hypnotic. It had a cadence that made you want to agree with him before you even processed his words. "Citizens of Earth," the man said, smiling gently, "do not be afraid of what happened on New Year's Eve. The silence was not an attack. It was an upgrade. It was the moment our collective consciousness synced. We have leveled up as a species. The voices you heard, that wasn't a deity judging you. That was your own higher self awakening. We have entered the age of unity." I felt a wave of nausea hit me in the spirit. It was a lie so elegant, so appealing, that I could see millions of people swallowing it whole. It appealed to their vanity. It told them they were gods. It told them they didn't need to repent. They just needed to evolve. Jesus looked at me, and there was a tear on his cheek. "Do you see how easy it is? The world rejects the Father because he asks for surrender. They will embrace this man because he offers them power without sacrifice. Elias, tell my people, do not listen to the explanation. When the news anchors begin to parrot this man's words, when the scientists validate his theories, turn it off. Close your eyes. Remember the voice you heard in the silence. That is your anchor. The vision shifted again, moving deeper into January. The scene was chaotic. I saw banks, massive marble-columned institutions, boarding up their windows. The ATMs were dark. People were standing in lines that wrapped around city blocks, panic in their eyes. The systems of Babylon are fragile, Jesus said. The silence will destabilize the algorithms that control the global markets. The pause in trading, the sync errors, it will cause a cascade failure. Money as you know it will begin to evaporate. But then, he showed me something that made my breath catch. In the middle of this economic collapse, I saw pockets of light. I'm not talking about electricity. I saw specific homes, specific neighborhoods, and even entire small towns that were glowing with a blue, ethereal light. What are those? I asked. Those are the cities of refuge, he said. They are the Goshen of your time. I zoomed in on one of these lights. It was a simple house in a suburb. Inside, a family was sitting around a dinner table. The news on the TV in the background was talking about food riots and supply chain collapses. But on the table, there was food. Not a feast, but enough. They were praying, and the father was breaking bread. As he broke it, I swear to you, the loaf didn't get smaller. I am restoring the supernatural economy, the Lord told me. His voice was filled with excitement now. For generations, my people have relied on the world system. Mortgages, credit cards, supply chains. They have forgotten that I fed 3 million people in the desert for 40 years. In 2026, I will remind them. He turned to me, gripping my shoulders. Tell them to prepare their homes, but not like survivalists. Do not hoard out of fear. Hoarding is a spirit of poverty. Prepare out of faith. Stock your pantries, yes, but do it so you can feed your neighbors. The safe zones are not bunkers. They are lighthouses. When the darkness gets thick in February and March, the lost will come running to the houses that have light. They will come for the food, but they will stay for the spirit. I saw people knocking on the doors of these glowing homes. I saw neighbors who had never spoken to each other weeping on front porches. The revival wasn't happening in cathedrals. It was happening in kitchens. It was happening over bowls of soup that never ran dry. This is the harvest, Jesus said. The enemy thinks he is starving the world into submission. I am using the hunger to drive them to the bread of life. The vision moved forward again, to spring 2026. The contrast was stark. The world outside the safe zones was becoming increasingly authoritarian. The counterfeit leader had implemented a new identification system, a way to verify your evolutionary status in order to buy and sell. It wasn't forced at gunpoint, not yet. It was sold as a convenience, a way to stabilize the crashing economy. The mark is not a sudden event, Jesus warned. It is a slow creep of compromise. It begins with agreeing to the lie. It begins with accepting the new narrative. Tell my people to guard their minds. The battle of 2026 is the battle for the narrative. Then, the tone of the encounter changed. The visions of the earth faded, and it was just me and him again on that crystalline floor. The immensity of the universe swirled beneath us. Elias, he said, I am sending you back to a skepticism you cannot imagine. They will call you crazy. They will say you had a hallucination caused by hypoxia. They will mock the date. Even my own church, the leaders who have built empires on their own intellect, will reject you. I don't care about them, I said, surprising myself with the ferocity of my voice. I saw you. I know what I know. Good, he smiled. It was a warrior's smile. Because I am not calling the comfortable. I am calling the broken. I am calling the Mary Magdalens, the Peters, the ones who know they are nothing without me. The army I am raising up in 2026 will not look like the church of 2024. It will be ragged, it will be desperate, and it will be dangerous to the kingdom of darkness. He stepped back, and the distance between us felt like a physical pain. "One last thing," he said. He pointed to a specific point on the timeline. December 31st, 11:59 p.m. The minute before the silence is the most critical minute in human history. The enemy will try to create a distraction, a war, a scandal, a breaking news event, something to pull the eyes of the world away from the Spirit and onto the screen. Warn them. When the clock counts down, do not look at the screens. Look at me. Tell them to turn off their devices. Tell them to gather their families. Tell them to wait in the stillness. And if they don't? I asked. His face fell. Then they will hear the silence, but they will not understand it. They will experience the event, but they will miss the encounter, and the deception that follows will sweep them away. The vortex began to open behind me again. The pull was stronger this time. My time was up. "Go, Commander," he said. "The mission is green. You have your orders." "Wait!" I yelled over the roar of the wind. "How will I know who is with us? How will I find the safe zones?" "You won't find them," he shouted back, his voice cutting through the dimensional tearing. "You will make them. Wherever 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, there is the fire. Build the fire, Elias. Build the fire." And then I was gone. Returning to my body the second time, well, I've already told you about the pain. But the psychological weight was heavier. I woke up in that hospital bed, knowing that the clock was ticking. I looked at the digital clock on the wall. It was counting seconds. Every second was one step closer to the end of the year. Since I've been back, I've tried to verify what I saw. I've looked at the economic indicators. They are wobbling, just like he showed me. I've looked at the tech sector. There are rumors of a singularity announcement coming early next year. The pieces are on the board. But here is the most important part. Here is why I'm recording this part of the message. The safe zones Jesus talked about. They aren't places you pay to get into. You don't buy a ticket. You don't need a bunker in Idaho. You become a safe zone by consecrating your home now. I started with my own house. My wife Sarah thought I was losing my mind at first, but then she saw my eyes. She saw the change in me. We sat in our living room, turned off the TV, and we prayed. We dedicated our home as an embassy of the kingdom of God. And I'm telling you, something changed in the atmosphere of our house. The air feels lighter. The fear that was gripping us about the future, it vanished. I believe that is the key. The blue light I saw in the vision wasn't magic. It was the presence of God resting on households that had decided to trust Him over the system. So, here are your orders. This is what you need to do between now and December 31st. First, do not let fear run your life. The counterfeit feeds on fear. If you are afraid, you are vulnerable to his lies. The silence is a gift. It is God hitting the reset button for you. Embrace it. Second, get your house in order. I don't mean clean the garage. I mean spiritual order. If there is unforgiveness in your family, deal with it. If there is secret sin, kill it. You cannot carry dead weight into 2026. The fire that is coming will burn up anything that isn't holy. Third, prepare for the distraction. Jesus warned about the minute before midnight. Expect it. Maybe it will be a threat of nuclear war. Maybe a cyber attack. Whatever the news screams at you on New Year's Eve, ignore it. It is a flare thrown up by the enemy to distract you from the king's arrival. Fourth, be ready to become a kitchen table pastor. When the systems fail in January, your neighbors aren't going to go to the megachurch. They are going to come to the person on their street who isn't freaking out. That needs to be you. Have a bag of rice. Have an extra blanket. But mostly, have the answer for the hope that is within you. I am Commander Elias Thorne. I don't know how much longer I will be allowed to share this. I have a feeling that as we get closer to the date, censorship will ramp up. They might take this video down. They might come for me. It doesn't matter. The message is out. The date is set. December 31st. The event is the silence. The warning is the counterfeit. The hope is the harvest. You have been briefed. The rest is up to you. I'll see you on the other side of the silence. Thorne out.